Before we start this video, a large thank you to Alexander, Joel, and Tabby for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And, as always, a massive thank you to Halo Burner and Ryan Bellin for their immense support of the channel this month on Patreon. It is greatly appreciated, gentlemen, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, we are going to continue with our renderer and collider decoupling by creating a folder in the assets folder here called editor. And this is going to be where we house our editor scripts. So let's go ahead and create a new mono behavior script. Make sure it is in the editor folder, that's important. We're going to say world location renderer, and then we're going to add the word editor towards the end. So we have world location renderer manager, which is our regular script. We're going to do that and add the word editor to the end of it. So let's delete the start and update functionality and drop in our namespace as is per tradition. And I'm going to make this derive, instead of mono behavior, from editor. And Visual Studio is going to completely fail the auto completion because I don't want steamworks.ugc, I want Unity editor. So basically this is going to make us, when we highlight the script in the inspector, we can add some custom logic to it. First though, we need to go up here and say custom editor, and then we're going to say type of. It's not mesh filter, it's going to be the script we want to target, which in our case is world location renderer manager. Alright, cool. Now, we're going to come down here in the public class and we're going to do an override, and we're going to say on inspector GUI. And what does that do? Well, if you hover over it, it says implement this function to make a custom inspector. Okay, cool. Now, we need to say world location renderer manager because that's what we want. I'm just going to call it renderer manager is equal to target as world location renderer manager. Now what does target mean? Let's hover over that and see. It says the object being inspected. Okay, clear enough. So when we have the object being inspected as the world location renderer manager, we can then get some functionality from it. So let's make a custom button. We can make a button by saying if GUI layout dot button. And then we can put some brackets here and put the name of the button. I'm going to call it, we can say find and disable. Actually, it's implied that you're going to find them all every single time. So I'm just going to say disable all renderers. We'll get rid of the find. And then within this disable all renderers, we can call two functions here. We can go to the render manager, dot find all mesh renderers, and then render manager dot toggle all mesh renderers false. Okay, cool. Now we can do the same thing, but for enabling it. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. I'll put it above here, so it enables first. And then we can say enable all renders, and we can change this false to a true. And of course, we can do the same thing now with the game objects as well, since we also covered that. So we can copy and paste this again, change renders to game objects, and change the find all renderers to find all root objects, and change toggle mesh renderers, of course, to toggle root objects. And then lastly, we can copy this one more time and then paste it so we have an enabled version of this as well. Okay, that looks good. Now, I'm going to show you a call, and I'll explain why it's important. So we'll put it down here. We're going to say editor utility dot set dirty, and then we can pass the render manager. So what does this do? Well, if I make changes to the scene with functionality in the editor scripts, basically it won't actually register the scene as changing. So when you save it, nothing will actually change. But this function call here makes it so whatever scene this game object is in basically gets flagged as dirty. So that means when you save something, the changes will actually be saved. Otherwise, you have to manually change something in the scene yourself. So I'm going to go back into the project now, and I'm going to go to my world scene, like so. And I'm going to go and drag in every single scene I have, so my entire world. And now really quickly, I'm just going to make one of these render managers because we haven't done it yet. So I'll create an empty game object. I'm just doing my structure scene, dungeon atrium structure, and I'll change this to the scene, or rather the game object name that matches it, which is going to be world location renderer manager, or just manager renderer if you prefer. I'll drag this up top and add the script to it. So we'll say world location renderer manager. Now you can see here I have all these buttons. If I click them, they will actually populate, as you can see, the list we have. Cool. But you don't want to drag one of those in your scene and click those buttons every single time you add new objects, and you don't want to even click them all right now. I just want to drag in a bunch of these empty game objects and have them all populate automatically. So we're going to go ahead and do that with just a couple clicks. But you will have to put these all in your scenes. Now, do not add them to spawner scenes because you cannot disable network game objects on start and then enable them after. They always have to be enabled when the scene loads. Otherwise, you will get some errors, or problems rather. So do not put any of these objects in a scene where you have spawners. Unless you have some kind of custom logic set up where you're spawning them yourself via spawning objects like I do in Nef. But if you're just having them in as in-scene game objects, do not add this game object to that scene. So skip the spawner scenes. Okay, now let's go to World Location Manager. You can see here I have all these world location renderers. So this is the scene where we're going to enable and disable our renderers as we need them. But we can also use this script as well to just basically toggle game mode and what I call light bake mode. So game mode is going to disable every single root object and renderer that you have from all your world location renders, so you can enable them in your game as you need when you actually get into your gameplay. But then light bake mode, or we can call it world edit mode, is going to re-enable everything so you can see where everything is. So before you actually save your world, you always toggle game mode, so you can let the game enable the renderers and the collider, or sorry, the game objects as required. But when you're actually building your world, you can see what's happening. You're going to toggle light bake mode. If you want to change the names, obviously that's cool. I just find these two names to be very appropriate, and I find it to be pretty clear and straightforward. So I'm going to say toggle game mode and toggle light bake mode. And basically whenever you're editing your scenes, you're always going to use these two buttons now. So I'm going to go to my editor folder again, and I'm going to make another editor script. This time, I'm going to change this name first to the World Location Manager because it's no longer called subscene. This time I'm going to make an editor script for the World Location Manager. So I'm going to create a new mono behavior script, and I'm going to call this World Location Manager Editor, just like that. Cool. Let's open that up. And now I am going to delete the start and update functionality and drop in my namespace as is per tradition. And I am going to do the same thing. We can just yoink it. You just make this drive from Unity Editor and make it basically fetch the proper script we're looking for, which is the World Location Manager. So I'm going to copy that and paste that in here in custom editor. And again, make it derive from editor. All right, we can just yoink the entire onInspector GUI function too and delete everything except for the button calls, and we can just edit the buttons as we need. So it'll be much the same over here, except this time what we're going to do is only have two buttons, and we're going to have one for toggling game mode and one for toggling light bake mode. Now, if you really want to get super fancy, you can make it so every time you save a scene, it automatically toggles your light bake mode, or sorry, your game mode. I'm pretty sure you can do that. I've never tried, but I think you can make a call for every time you save something in Unity. I could be mistaken though. So I'm going to get the World Location Manager here as the location manager. And under the button for toggling game mode, I'm simply going to say location manager.toggle game mode, and I'm going to delete the brackets on this if statement because it's one line. I think that looks neater. And I'll paste this here, and under light mode, but instead of game mode, I'll say toggle light bake mode. All right, looks very good. Now let's go over and actually make the logic. It is quite simple. Basically, we need to get every single world location render manager across all scenes. So let's make an array of world location render managers. Let's call it render managers. Important, when you actually call these functions, make sure all of your scenes that you have in your world are in your scene view in your inspector with your world scene. So we're going to say find objects by type world location render manager. I'm going to say find objects sort mode is equal to none. And then we're going to do a for loop, and we're going to iterate through our render managers, which we're looking for. And you shouldn't need to check for null because it's only going to grab the ones that are there, but I'm going to check for null anyway because it's always a good practice to check for null in your for loops. And maybe there's some weird case where I don't know where it can become null. All right, so render managers I.toggle mesh renders, or sorry, root objects first. And then we're going to say render managers I. Right above that, we're going to say toggle mesh renders. So we're going to turn both the mesh renders and the root objects to true. And then above that, we're going to grab them. Whoops, this should be true, not false. I'm confusing my toggle game mode and light bake mode. There we go. We're going to say find all mesh renders and then find all root objects right above that. So you technically don't need to find all mesh renders and root objects here, and I'll explain why in a moment. Let's copy this entire logic right here and paste it up in game mode and change the trues to false. So every time, here's why you don't need to find these. You're clicking toggle game mode every single time you make changes to your world and you leave. So when you toggle game mode, that's the only time you need to find the renders and root objects, because that's the only time that you really need to have it definitely set up. If you make a change to the world and then leave, you're always toggling game mode. So as long as you don't forget to toggle game mode, it will find those and add it to the list there. So there's no need to call it twice. Now, if I come into the game here and I click toggle game mode, you can see this. Now, if I click toggle, oh, it's not working, sorry. I forgot to turn true to false on toggle game mode, my bad. So I'm going to change this to false, false, now save. Now go back to my scene again, toggle game mode, and yes, that is working. So you can see all of the renderers are now disabled. If I toggle light bake mode, they come back in. Cool. So let's test it in the world and see if it works, and it's not going to. I'm going to show you why. You can see here, yes, our renders are populating and my root object is, but just watch, I'll just show you, because I want you to see that the collision is working as well before I actually make any changes. But you can see here, yes, the root objects and the mesh renders are populating, very cool. But if I go into the scene here, what is this? I have my collisions, so that's working as intended. My root objects have enabled, but my renders have not enabled. Well, there's a couple of things we need to do. The first thing we need to do is go to where we check for our required renders. You can see here, okay, we're looking at it after we load the area, cool. But there's a problem. It's being called in the same frame we load our scenes. That's not good. So we could come here, and what we can do is go down here to check for required scenes coroutine, and we could make it wait until the end of frame until scenes are finished loading. That's good. That's fine. But we also need to do something else, or we should do something else, because there can still be a case where this might not be enough. But let's actually address a problem that isn't waiting for this to load, because if I save this right now, I'm going to put a comment here. I'll show you what else we need to do. We could just simply go to the scene events. And what we want to do is just basically call this function every time a scene has finished loading. So luckily we have a call for that. If we go up here to on scene event, we can go down to load complete, and then we can put it right down here. When the scene loading is false, we can check for renders, and then there's no need to actually just wait for it to be done, because we'll automatically do it every time a scene is loaded. Now if I go into the scene, you can see it mostly works, but why is that one not showing up? Well, see, you might not have noticed, when I was in the scene, I clicked on the atrium, and I actually changed the scene manually, so it's saved. But if I go here to my render in the structures and the corridors, for some reason there's nothing in there in the root objects and the renders. Well, what we need to do is actually go and grab this functionality for setting the editor dirty and put it on that as well, because the editor dirty call only works on the scene the object is in. So basically, we need to also set all the scenes to dirty that all of the basic world location render managers are in. And we can do that by saying if unity underscore editor, make sure you put that there. We're going to say editor utility.set dirty and pass this. And then we can end the if by saying number sign end if. And put this on toggle all mesh renderers and find all mesh renderers and toggle all game objects and find all game objects. So this statement here for if unity editor, this makes sure it only runs in the editor. So honestly, you only need it on the find. You don't need it on the toggle as well. But you need to put that if statement there, otherwise you will get an error when you try to do a build. Now I'll just show you, I'll go back into the game, and if I'm just going to get rid of, you can see there's 0, 0, but if I even get rid of this scene here, but you can see it has 0 root objects and 0 renderers. So let's unload the scene, or remove it rather, and then I'll bring it back. I'm not going to save it. And here it is again. Now if I go up to my world location manager, and I click toggle game mode, that will find all the renders and game objects. If I come back here and click it, you can see there's a star there showing that the scene needs to be saved, so I can save it now. And now if I click it, you can see it has root game objects and mesh renders. Now if I go back to my game, boom, there it is, working all nice. So there you go, guys. Now you have a way to decouple your renders and colliders. So if you're playing multiplayer and someone else is in a different part of the map, you can keep the collisions loaded while not actually caring about the renderers. Now, if you want, I can also show one more thing, or I can move on. A thing I do in Nephilim, because I have a lot of characters on screen at one time, sometimes upwards to 30, is I don't want to keep all the shadows on those characters loaded, or their animators enabled, or their mesh renderers enabled, just like a scene. So what I do is basically I make it so I toggle the ability for a live object to have shadows, I toggle its animation ability, and I toggle its render ability, all basically if it's on my screen or not. So if that is something you're interested in, I can show you. If not, I can move on. That's a further optimization tool. But basically that makes it so if there's 13 or 14 dudes standing out of my camera view and there's a real-time light in the scene, they're not at all affecting my memory because they're not being loaded in and the shadows are not calculating. So if that is of interest, comment below and I'll cover that in the next video. If not, I will move on to something else. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you learned something new. Thank you to my patrons for keeping my lights on as per usual. Thank you to the people who take the time to leave a comment, like the video, and share it via word of mouth. It is alive and well because of you. I hope you all have a very lovely weekend, and I will see you next week unless you're watching my second series, in which case I will see you tomorrow.